Welcome to Tremendous Tales with Liz Pichon. That's me. I write and draw all the Tom Gates books and other books like Shoe Wars. But for this brand new podcast, I'll be chatting to my brilliant guests about some very important things like snacks in Snack Chat. We'll also get to hear about their own tremendous tale and a tremendous fail because everyone makes mistakes. You can play along with What's That Sound and find out what tremendous book they'll be recommending. So my guest today is the amazing Owen Colfer, and Owen is an Irish author whose best-selling Artemis Fowl novels have sold more than, are you ready for this, 25 million copies worldwide. Hey! Famous actor and director Kenneth Branagh directed the movie version for Disney, and Owen's books have won numerous awards, including the British Children's Book of the Year, the Irish Book Awards Children's Book of the Year, the German Children's Book of the Year. The BBC made a hit series based on his book, Half Moon Investigations. Owen also writes crime novels featuring Irish bouncer Daniel McAvoy. Owen has collaborated with some of his favourite writers and artists, including Oliver Jeffers, Andrew Donkin, Giovanni Rigano and PJ Lynch on various projects. Owen has just finished a 2-year term as Ireland's Children's Laureate and was delighted to be allowed to play around with the Iron Man character in his 2016 novel The Gauntlet. For theatre, Owen has written the books for the musicals The Lords of Love and Noel, and scripts for the plays Holy Mary and My Real Life. Owen lives in Dublin, Ireland, with his wife and 2 sons. And after such a long list of amazing achievements, we're now going to talk to Owen about some other very important things, like snacks. So thank you so much for joining us.
My cunning plan was to write such a long introduction that there wouldn't be much time left for me to actually have to do anything. So I feel foiled. And I feel I'm going to be overworked, but, I'm game.
Snack Chat.
When I was a kid, I was very obsessed with, whenever I was coming back from school, I was always thinking about what I was going to eat. And one of the reasons that I put caramel wafers in the Tom Gates books is because that was one of my favourite snacks. And I never realised it was going to end up being such a big part of the books. What have you chosen, Owen? And why?
And before I get to that, I have to ask you an important question is how did you eat caramel wafers? What was your method? Of eating a caramel wafers. That tells a lot about a person, how they go about that.
It really depended on how many caramel wafers there were and how hungry I was.
That's good.
If there
good
was
answer.
more than one of them around and I knew that I could eat one quickly, then and there was a prospect for another one, then I'd just eat it normally. But if I knew I was going to have to make it last, then I would try and sort of eat it in layers.
The layers. And my snack is a very Irish snack, and it's a brand of crisp called Tayto, Tayto, which are a legend in Ireland. And they're so popular that we have a theme park called Tayto Park, where you can go and eat crisps and slide down crisps and wear crisps.
That. Have you been?
But no, I haven't, as I'm a grown-up. So I think I would have to find some young children and bring them. My kids are far too old for that. But as a youth, I loved the Tayto so much, and I would extend the life of a bag of Tayto by just putting them in my mouth and letting them dissolve, which kind of ruins the point of crisps because you need to have that crunch. What I loved about the Tayto was back in the 70s, Liz and Mark, I don't know if you remember, but there was a brief period where chemicals were very popular. So none of this organic stuff. It was all, the more chemicals you can stuff into a snack, the better. And even on television, it was all, for mash, get smashed. Don't use potatoes, which are all over the place. Get this robot mash stuff. And I think Tayto used to be a bit like that in that they were cheese and onion, and that was very aspirational. It was a very, very strong flavour. And if you had a Tayto, then you were done standing close to people for the day. And I think they were possibly radioactive. And one of my jobs was writing a musical with a friend of mine, and we had a song about growing up in the 70s, and it was a child of the 70s, and it said organic food didn't mean a thing to me. My mama's favourite letter was E, and that is how it worked in Ireland. I think the famine scarred us, so we just ate everything we could, and it was mostly chemical. But so I have very fond memories of just Getting a bag of Tayto. I don't know if you've done this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, hang on.
Oh, you've got one?
We have them here.
You've got them there. You've got them there.
This is why we were very excited.
You open them slightly and then you just smash them. And then it just takes like 4 hours and you just have to dip a finger in and you come out with like a Tayto popsicle finger and you just eat them for the entire
I don't know,
afternoon.
that sounds like the sort of... One of my sisters used to do this thing where... We are rustling around. She used to do this thing where she would actually come up and crunch the bag.
Yeah.
So that and that was really annoying because you wanted to eat the crisps like normally, but she'd come up and just like crunch them into tiny bits in your hand, like squash your hand around it, so they were all really smashed up. But no, I have to admit, actually, when the bag of crisps arrived, I did pinch one early.
Yeah.
So these crisps they started in 1954. They're 66 years old, and apparently companies worldwide sought to buy the rights to the Tayto technique.
Yeah.
Tayto crisps are a cultural phenomenon throughout much of the Republic of Ireland. So much so that in November 2010, like you said, Tayto opened their own theme park called the Tayto Park.
Tayto Park.
I'm going to have to say, obviously, children listening, there are other snacks available, and carrot sticks are very delicious too. You don't have to have crisps and chocolate and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I always do say that as well. I mean, we've written songs about chips and all kinds of things, and I always have to add the vegetables in as well, saying
well, chip technically
yeah, technically it's a vegetarian snack.
Yeah.
Tremendous tales.
Well, the second part of this podcast is talking about a tremendous tale, and you know, some of the things that I did when I was a kid, I've used those stories very much, and I've put them in the Tom Gates books, and so it was an idea about how things are happening to you now or happened to you when you were a child, you know, just about where stories come from. I think it's always the biggest question that I always get asked is, where did you get your ideas from? I think that's the number one question I always get asked. So we've given this opportunity for you to tell us a tremendous tale. Owen, have you got a tremendous tale that you'd like to share?
I've got loads. I think I get that question all the time. Where do you get your ideas from? Or who gave you the idea that was the right thing to do? That's usually from my family members. I think kids don't think they have interesting lives. You know, they think, oh, well, there's nothing happening in my life. There's nothing worth writing a story about. But I don't believe that, because in a child's world, everything is shrunken down. And I remember when I was 12 or 10, I knew every stone in the garden. I knew every tree, you know, every plant, every leaf. I knew where there was ponds. You don't really know that as an adult. You don't pay the same attention to the bigness of the smallness. So I encourage kids just, you know, think about your own life. And then to make that point, I tell them about how, you know, driving in a car when you're little can be a very exciting thing. And we had one of these cars that was a Renault 4. I don't know if you remember those, but they were very boxy French cars with a strange gear stick. And the nice thing about those was you could climb over the back seat into the trunk or the boot. And there's 5 boys in our family. So my dad cut up a bit of foam rubber and he put it in the boot. And the lucky 2 boys were allowed to travel in that, lie down with their books. So this was amazing. And obviously there were no seatbelts anywhere, because kids were expendable. So I remember driving home, and if my dad went around a corner, we would all pile up, the 5 boys, and then we would all be punching each other. He hit me, he smelled me, he's breathing my air. And it was just a big free-for-all. And so what my father would do to combat this is he would start to tell a story. So this was an audiobook before audiobooks, and I just thought this was completely magical. He would just pluck story from the air, and I just thought, he doesn't have a book? How is this possible that he's just making up a story? And it was my first experience of the magic of storytelling. And he knew his audience, I have to say. There were very violent stories about Vikings. My mother would be horrified. My dad would say, and then Eric the Viking chopped the head of 4 people with his sword, brain biter, haha. And we would be, yes, father, that's amazing. And my mother would tag in and try and like bring it back down. And she would say, but then Eric decided that maybe he should turn his sword into a shovel and open a garden centre. And we'd be like, boo, get off, you're terrible. And one time I was in the trunk with one of my brothers, and we were lying down, and we were getting lost in the world of the Vikings. But one of my brothers just kept interrupting. I forget what was wrong with him, but he'd just say, are we there yet? What's happening? Well, what colour is the sky? Just ridiculous off-topic questions. And then we went over a humpback bridge. And this was a very old car, and the trunk opened.
Oh no.
And the loud brother fell out the trunk.
You didn't give him a little extra push there, Owen.
I did not. How dare you, Liz? No, and then we went off the bridge and the trunk closed, and my father kept talking, and we realised he doesn't know that my brother fell out the trunk. So we looked at each other and nobody said anything, but there was a real conspiratorial kind of a look where we were asking ourselves the same question: do we want our brother back, or do we want to hear the rest of this story? And there was nothing said, but my older brother just gave one wink, and not a word was said, and we got home. And my mother lined us up beside the car to count, because five brothers, you have to count them. So she went 1, 2, 3, 4, and where's number 5? And what we decided to do in that moment, in our wisdom, was to convince my mother there never had been a number 5. So we were like, what are you talking about? Where's the other guy? What other guy? What are you talking about, Mum? I think you had a long labour there with the last. You're gone a bit. I don't think there was never any. And we got, of course, that didn't work. And we eventually confessed that he was 10 miles back at the side of the bridge.
And was it really 10 miles?
It was actually 13 miles. Possibly alive, but we couldn't. We couldn't be sure about that. And we went back, and he was fine. He was sitting there with a big, scowl on his face. But I think everybody. Everyone learned a lesson that day. We learned that my mother could count to 5, and my brother learned that we really didn't like him interrupting stories. So I think it worked out well. And when I tell that story to kids, they do love it and they do laugh, and they invariably have a brother or a cousin or a sister who's interrupting all the time. So it kind of connects with them. Yeah. And then they start thinking about that person, and did they ever do something funny? And you get loads of stories coming in, and all you say is, don't mention any names and tell me about this person. And I would probably use it in a book and get a trilogy out of it. So
what I want to know now is I'd love to hear your brother's version of that story. I made the mistake. Somebody asked me how old I was on one of these events, and I said, well, how old do you think I am? And then they said it ranged between 81 and 36. And
that's such a rookie error, Liz. How could you? As a seasoned professional like yourself.
So we're coming towards the exciting part of the podcast where we're going to ask you to guess what's that sound? What's that sound? The look on Owen's face, the fact that we're playing.
You've got jingles. You've got jingles. This is quality stuff. Quality stuff.
Oh yes, we've got lots of jingles here. So do you want to have a listen to this sound and see if you can guess what it is? And we'll come back to it later as well.
Okay. Was that the sound, or was there something wrong with the microphone? It sounded like a tap running. It sounded to me like a tap running.
It could be
a forceful tap.
Well,
so with good pressure, I don't know what it is. Bars of pressure. I would say a high bar pressure tap, possibly in the back of a restaurant, maybe a McDonald's, but it could be Burger King. I don't want to be too precise. It could be Burger King.
You're not far wrong on that. So what we're going to do, we're going to ask you to tell us another story, a tremendous fail, and then we'll come back afterwards. And because, of course, everybody will be desperate to know the answer to that, won't they?
Yeah. Yes. Well, no, it's a way to keep those listeners listening.
Tremendous fail.
So, we've called this section Tremendous Fail. And I said, because everybody makes mistakes. And actually, sometimes you quite often learn a lot more from when things go wrong than when they actually go right. So what do you think your tremendous fail, what would you like to tell our listener about?
Our listener. So I would just like to tell our listener, who is Mr. Boris J. from London, that my tremendous fail, of which there's been so many, that I really had to think which was possibly the least embarrassing. And about 5 years ago, I was asked by, I forget which publisher, to do a Doctor Who novella. They were
Oh.
doing these 13 doctors, and would I do one? I said, who else is doing it? And they said, well, Neil Gaiman is doing it. I said, right, I'm in. So I have never watched Doctor Who, and I had never watched it. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be fun and interesting to try and do a Doctor Who novella, having never watched any of the Doctor Who's?
Right.
And I answered myself, yes, it would. And so I did this about the first Doctor, and I wrote this story, and there was like sword fights and fake hands and spaceships, and I thought it was amazing. I was very delighted with myself. And then it came out, and apparently the Doctor Who fans are quite serious about being fans, and they don't like people. They don't really approve of people dipping their toe into the TARDIS waters. They really have to. So they like ripped me to shreds, and I was amazed. I was like, "What? It's a great story," but even it was so bad that even the guy who did the audiobook commented on his own feed that he didn't really like it either, but he had to do it contractually. So, but the one that really got through to me, I think the one criticism was one of my best mates, and he's a fellow called Declan Dempsey from Wexford, and he is brilliant at giving kind of the backhanded compliment. Which is actually an insult. And so he said to me, he said, Owen, I said, yes, Dick. He said, you know that Doctor Who story you wrote? And I said, yes. He said, that was the best Star Trek story I've ever read. So, so not only did he make me laugh, he also insulted me. And that is not easy to do. So, and there was a little compliment in there. But so my advice would be, if you're going to do any story you are going to do, no matter how short or brief or how limited the circulation, take it seriously. And the ones to take most seriously are the funny ones, because they're probably the hardest to do. So I learned from that not to kind of dash off a casual story, because I've sold loads of books and everything I do is going to be amazing. But so that was my lesson, and I thought that's good for young writers to know. It's really good. Don't be casual. Take it seriously.
And it's interesting as well what you said about funny writing, because I think when I did the Tom Gates book, I mean, I'd done picture books beforehand, and in fact, it started off as a picture book first and then gradually morphed into a book for older children. But my premise was I just wanted to try and write a book that I thought I would have liked to have read. Yeah. And I used to really like reading funny books with lots of pictures and drawings, and to try and put all the things that I loved when I was a kid into the books. And I think sometimes because it has so many pictures in it, and you quite often hear that people tend to think that you don't work as hard on them, and also trying to make them funny as well. It's actually, I'm not trying to get the smallest violin in the world out, but it is quite hard trying to make books funny.
It is, and I sometimes when you're telling people what you do, they kind of give you a look of pity, like, oh, would you ever write a real novel? And you're like, I do write real novels. Yeah.
Something serious. Are you going to write like a proper book? Would you ever do something for grown-ups? Which you have done as well. So
well, let me tell you, Liz, it is no harder. So I thought this is going to be really hard. I'm going to have to think. I'm going to have to use my brain more. But actually, I find the kid stuff harder to write, because every word has to be perfect, or as perfect as you can make it. I would say that kid stuff is harder to do for me. And I've written 4 or 5 adult books, and the 2 of them I've done brilliantly, even better than the kids' books. But I did find them a lot easier to write than the adult stuff.
And the kids are very, they know what they like and what they don't like. They don't mess around. If they're not going to enjoy something, they'll let you know.
They're brutal. Like.
Yes.
Artemis Fowl, the first 2 Artemis Fowls were great. The rest of them are rubbish. And they will tell you this, and you'll say, "You're my son. You can't say that to me." But they will literally come up to you in a queue and say, "I'm not buying your new book because I hate it, but will you sign this old one?" They're just vicious.
Or give you somebody else's book to sign. Who are you? You get asked things like, "Are you famous?" And I'm like, "Well, if you're asking me, then probably not."
No, it's terrible. Alex Ferguson's book, that's the most off-topic book I ever got to sign. Some kid would sign this book. I love football and my teacher made me come. So you say, okay, what are you going to say? Okay, no problem.
Yeah, okay, I'll sign that. That's a good one. I bet everybody's desperate to find out what the answer to What's That Sound?
What's that sound?
Oh, is it a shower? I'm changing my guess. My guess to shower.
It is water. It is actually torrential rain on a stairwell. Exactly. And we thought we'd pick torrential rain because, as you said, Mark's also from Dublin, and I think I've only ever been once when it hasn't been raining. I've seen. When we first met, we did a drive around around Ireland, and I saw most of it through a wet windscreen. Literally.
Well, you see, my difficulty there was that we only have bungalows in Ireland, so no stairwells. So I wouldn't have heard that particular sound. It's planning regulations gone mad. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, so it's just torrential rain of some kind. So that's what it sounds like. And actually, not that long ago, you could have heard it here as well. So Owen is actually basking in Dublin in sunlight, and it's pouring with rain in Brighton at the moment. I'm asking all my guests to recommend a tremendous book of some kind, either something from your childhood, something that's out now. So what tremendous book would you like to recommend, Owen?
I would like to recommend a book from my own childhood, which is called Stig of the Dump, which I'm sure I'd be surprised if someone hasn't mentioned it already. But for me, that was a game changer. I remember my mother got me that book. I was sick at home for a couple of days, and she got this book from a secondhand shop. And I was really lucky that my parents encouraged reading so much and that it was really nurtured. But I read this book, and up to that point, I seem to remember that most of the books I had read had very, square-jawed heroes and very beautiful heroines, and it was all very stereotypical. And even though I enjoyed the books, I didn't feel that there was a door into that book for me. I felt that if I was there, I would be watching these people have that adventure. But with Stig of the Dump and Barney, I felt, oh my goodness, this guy might be my pal. If I was there, I would be in that gang, and that was a way into the book for me. So, and of course, it's a brilliant book, brilliantly written, and it has it has a hideout in the chalk pit. They go into the past, into the Neolithic age. It just has everything, and it's beautifully written, and it's funny, and it's about families and friendship. So, if you haven't read Stig of the Dump, and I believe it was made into a series about 10 years ago, I think, by the BBC, but I would read the book first. And
did you read it to your boys?
Listen, no. To read stories to my boys, I have to fight my way into the room, kneel on their chest, hold their eyelids open, and so no, we did read everything, but I think we never got further. We never really got further than we never got into novels.
Shameless plug.
This is your opportunity, Owen. You've got so many things going on. I know you've got the Fowl twins deny all charges. Is that right?
Yes,
that's coming out on the 27th of May. So would you like to tell us a bit more? This is your chance for your shameless plug to tell us everything that you want to about your work. What's going on?
I'm so bad at plugging because I think it's a very Irish thing. You don't like blowing your own trumpet, so so that's why I brought this person. No, I haven't. So it's it's the second book in the planned trilogy about Miles and Beckett Fowl, who are Artemis's little brother and twins, and they hook up with an officer from the LEP, and they go off to America, and they get blown up in a jet. There's some fart jokes, a crash or two. There's a semblance of a plot. I mean, it doesn't really hold together, but there's a lot of jokes, and nobody dies. Then that's really all I can. If you liked the rest of my books, you will possibly like this, and it's got a very good cover, very dynamic.
It's got an excellent cover.
But it's I've been working on the Fowl books now for 20 something years. So I've just finished writing the third book, which is called The Fowl Twins Get What They Deserve, and that's coming out next year, and that's it. Then I'm retiring
that
the
it?
entire family.
Do you know what else
I've
you got?
had
Have you got
enough.
ideas for? Of course you have, but have you got?
Well, I'm doing two. I've got 3 picture books coming out over the next 2 years and 1 graphic novel.
Wow.
And I also have a standalone ghost story which I'm working on. We have a Christmas musical tour in North America this Christmas. I think there'll be more people on the stage than in the audience, according to the that's the regulations. So,
At the moment.
But I do love theatre because it's so immediate,
Yeah.
and you can see your words coming to life or not. And a good actor can just do so much with.
Did you say it was a
with
musical?
text. It's a musical, so I write the lyrics, and I have a composer friend of mine, Liam Bates. He does the music, and we've worked together on several things, including the aforementioned disco comedy musical, which was my favourite. And so we've done this, and this is its 3rd tour, so it's going really well. So we're very happy with that.
Excellent. Oh, well, I'll put all the information when the podcast comes out. We'll put all the links and the information so everyone can
Thank
see
you.
what you're up to. And you've just finished, it says, 2 years of being the Children's Laureate in Ireland.
Yeah.
And
That was a while back. PJ took over from me, actually.
okay.
But it was such fun. We travelled the country doing readings in places that wouldn't normally get writers. So, for example, we stuffed 10 writers onto a lifeboat and went to an island off north of Ireland, Tory Island, and there was actually more writers, I think, than kids in the school. And if you ever want to see if writer vomit is the same as ordinary human vomit, well, then just stuff 8 of them on a lifeboat. And I was the only one, having grown up at sea, who didn't get violently ill. And even worse, I am the kind of mean person who laughs at you when you're getting ill at sea.
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Now, what? But one person, I mean, I can't be blamed. One person's dentures went, so I had to. You've got to laugh at that. I mean, you wouldn't be human. You'd be a Borg or a Dalek if you didn't laugh
I
at
can see that image already.
Your letters.
I'm sure you get lots and lots of letters from children as well. But I got a particular letter here. This is from a little girl called Florence. So one of the things that she wrote to me is saying that I think your books are amazing because they take me to different land and they aren't boring. That's always a good thing,
That's
isn't
nice.
it?
Good.
Yeah,
It's a good start.
Here are 2 important questions that I would like to ask you. So I thought I'd throw them to you as well, Owen. Is it hard to think of your ideas for books? And do you like writing books?
Well, first of all, Florence, I love your albums, so thanks for writing in. It's not. I have the problem of too many ideas, but I think what you have to do. What's hard is to find out which is a good idea and which is a really bad idea, and which idea is a little bit like another idea you had or another book that you read. So you have to be choosy with your ideas. But once you start on that idea, or once you get to a certain point, and for me that point is 10,000 words. Once I get to 10,000 words, I have to finish. I'm not stopping. So I say to myself, right, I'm on this horse till the end of the race. So that's my cutoff point. And do I like writing? Most of the time. You know, sometimes I'm tired and grumpy, but most of the time I go out to my office. I can play my own music, which is usually something from the 80s like Kate Bush or Pink Floyd. The only place I can have all my own books and not feel self-conscious is out in the office. So I'm out there and I have my David Bowie print looking down over me, and it's just a really happy place. And I think I'm very lucky to have that space, and a lot of people don't. But I had promised myself that I would at some point have an office in the garden, so that's what I have now.
With your secret stash of Tayto crisps in the corner that nobody
Tayto
else
crisp,
can take.
just dissolving them on my tongue over the hours.
Well, all I can say is thank you so much for taking part in this podcast.
You're very
You've been
welcome.
absolutely brilliant. We've enjoyed listening to all your stories, all your advice,
Yeah.
all your tales. And one of the things that we do with the Tom Gates books is I give out special badges. So red badges for extra creative stuff, and there's blue badges for if they've done something in sport, and green badges, a bit like the Blue Peter badges for eco and other sort of recycling projects. But we also give out for people that have done incredibly good, very special gold Tom Gates badge for everything that you've done in literacy and children's books. So here we are, I'm holding it
wow.
up. So we are going to send to you via very slow post your very own gold Tom Gates badge to wear.
When you started talking about badges, I said, this better end with me getting a badge. I don't care. I don't care about those kids getting badges for sport. I want a gold one, and
there
this has worked out very well indeed.
You have a gold Tom Gates badge. So
Thank you, Liz.
I will pop that in the post for you with a little thank you card as well.
With obviously with the €10,000 fee as well, but mainly the badge.
Well, with the empty packet of Tayto crisps. So thank you so much. You've been absolutely brilliant. I know that everyone's going to really enjoy listening to all your stories and everything.
Thank you. I had a lovely time, and I hope this runs, and I'm sure.
Well, the idea is that we're going to talk to lots of authors, illustrators, and then sort of try and talk to lots of other creative people in different places. You know, musicians, people that write scripts, you know, all kinds of things. So we'll get lots of different stories.
Well, if you're looking for a certain Doctor Who audio reader, do not go through me. That's all I'm saying, because that will not work.